speak. She did ask me yesterday, very last minute, and I was very excited to say yes. This has been such an inspiring group to me since I was part of it. Like I would say, I started many, many years ago. And when I first came in contact with DA, I was really surprised at the genuineness of everyone in the group and how everybody was just so available to be part of something so much bigger, something that really over time I came to call this group more than DA or Debtors Anonymous, but really Prosperous Anonymous, right? Because there's something that shifts inside you by just admitting to the fact that you need help. And that's when I started to do. I started to say, when I came into the group, I was like, I need help. I have stress, I have things to handle, and I admitted to myself for the first time that I need help. And then all these channels of prosperity, love, and being able to receive in a healthy way, being able to distinguish the difference between self-care versus selfish. All of those things, the little voices underneath me that dealt with guilt, shame, hiding, dread, fear, started to be dealt with at a whole different level because I had the support. Now I had other alternative supports and my own background in hypnotherapy and other subconscious shifts that I was doing, which aided me a lot, helped me a lot to be able to incorporate so many beautiful things within this 12-step program into other elements of my life. And I recommend everyone look into different elements and bring it into the higher self, the higher power. My story goes that when I was 9 years old, I was told by my father that we're going to be leaving Iran, Persia, and we're going to be actually escaping through the desert to come to America because of the situation of the war between Iraq and Iran and everything that was going on at that time. So at a very early age, I learned to jump into a fight or flight mode. And it took me a long time till I can manage the levels of stress inside myself to come back to a place of pure state of being instead of constantly being in the state of doing or having or fight or flight mode. And so that's why I feel qualified to speak today about the topic of emotional wellness, health, and how it relates to the 12 steps and finances and the entire scenario of everything that we learn here at Debtors Anonymous. So when we left from Iran, it was getting into this desert with 20 people, me, my two little brothers. My youngest brother was 5 years old. And we were in this desert for 5 days, being offered camels to, venture across all the way from Iran to Pakistan. And in those 5 days, I remember my subconscious mind just tapping into this place of kind of like escape, adventure, and a bit of numbness is what I recall. And that numbness began to take its toll over the years until the time when I started to actually tap into myself and get more connected with who I am and the shift and the changes that I need to make in order to become more in touch with myself and ultimately become awakened to life again, right? Those would be the words I would say, becoming awakened to life again. And so we talked about, like many times in the 12-step program, especially in DA, we talk about the first step that we admitted we were powerless over our lives, or in this case debt, or we're talking about health issues, that our lives had become unmanageable. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And when I think about my adventure and what I went through, one of the things that comes to my mind is when we think about higher power, initially it could be anything higher than what I feel, anything higher than the trap or the limited thinking that I have inside me. That could be my higher power. And the beauty of the words higher power, it's really beautiful when you think about it, because it's in relation to whatever you're actually wherever you are. There's wherever you are, because whatever you think you are, you're more than that. So there's always a higher power. So you don't necessarily need to even believe in God to believe in a higher power, because whoever you think you are, you're much more than that. And your unconscious mind rejects the thought of limitation all the time. So by tapping into a higher power, we're already set up for success, whether we want it or not, at a very deep unconscious level. Now, as we know, different parts of the body handle stress differently. So, for example, if you're suffering from the effects of trauma or grief, or you feel like resentful or sorry for yourself, or you feel overwhelmed by like your many responsibilities, or maybe you feel guilty, you blame yourself, you're in despair, or you expect to fall and somebody should catch you, or you lack that confidence to take your first step. So all of these feelings generally usually take their toll if they're not dealt with, usually in the lower aspects of the body, like knee problems, weight issues, constipation, because it has something to do at a very deep unconscious metaphoric level with processing that which we're not processing at an emotional and spiritual level. So the processing becomes physical. So sometimes, I give healing and energy work sessions, and through the use of hypnotherapy and higher self therapy. And sometimes I have clients asking me like, well, what does this particular moment in my life, what I'm going through physically, have to do with what happened out there, or the ticket that I just got, or the court case, or my relationship? And so one of the things I've come to learn through the use of these powerful subliminal shifts is that everything on the outside, everything we have on the outside, has a correlation with our inner being, especially our physical body. In fact, some people think that cancer is, for example, a physical disease or a physical ailment. But, if we come to understand it, even at a metaphysical or even scientific level, you'll see that cancer cannot be located in the body. It's an emotion, a metaphysical aspect of something that gets created over time and then shows its physical symptoms and the levels of our health and our physical body. So there's an ancient Hebrew term for the word cancer, which was written 3,000 years ago, and the word for cancer is sartan, and which is an interesting thing because in many languages it's the same word, sartan. In Persian, it means cancer. In Hebrew, it means cancer. And in Aramaic, it actually defines the word cancer, which sar means to remove, and tan means resentment or hatred, right? So you might ask yourself, does everyone that have cancer have hatred? No, that's not the answer necessarily. But the fact is there are cells inside that body that want to come agreement from conflicts together. This could be passed on from generations of emotions from generations ago, and it could be something you created on your own, or it could be something that the environment handed on to you and you didn't say no to it, whatever it may be. But those cells want to come to agreement at some level, and they're not getting the agreement that they deserve, and as a result, you end up with one of the physical symptoms, which is called cancer. So cancer's been around for thousands of years. It's just that we've decided to finally call it that name, Others used to call it leprosy or many other skin diseases or flesh-eating disorders. So there's so many different ways to look at this thing, but ultimately it comes down to the higher self, higher power problem, which this group addresses so beautifully. And that's why I love to stay in touch with this group, even though I'm not always instantly, actively checking in every week, but I'm always in touch with the group and the lovely people in this group, including Carol and so many other people like Tony that I met a while ago. And so I want to go over, I think it would be nice to give everyone a little perspective about what I feel about the levels of stress and health-related issues. So I'm going to go over quickly, and I'm going to let you know how you can locate the body part problem, the stress you have in a certain body part, and the emotion behind it, routing back to the higher power. So, like I said, if you're having issues with knee problems, weight issues, constipation, usually it routes back to trust, safety, and security. And so, as I talked about the base of a person, the root, the trust, the safety, the security, which really comes from our connection to the whatever part of us is our higher power, that part of us that's our higher self, the part of us that we know is higher than who we are, and the part of us that carries us at a very deep subconscious level, even when we're having difficulty moving forward at a more physical level. the part of us that overcomes despondency, despair, all of that, the part of us that helps us with our self-mastery, resides in our lower being and at the level of our highest being. So it's really interesting how they all come together. But one of the affirmations that I love is, I have the structure I need to feel confident to express myself creatively. And this relates really well with what you're listening to here in this zone one, literally are the core, what holds us together. So I invite you to listen to this next piece. It's a soft meditation to tap into your higher self and to your inner child.
Hello and welcome to the third Genuine Hypnosis Happiness Podcast. My name's Rob Cubban. Hello and welcome. It's the middle of April and I've had one hot day here in London, nice weather, and I'm feeling absolutely excellent. I'm trying to say to myself that I should take the good times with the bad times, and when things get bad, try not to see them as bad things. Try and embrace the discomfort as well as the pleasure of life. And I'm trying very hard to improve my meditation practice and access my higher self. Which brings me nicely on to the interviewee of our third Genuine Hypnosis Happiness Podcast, Shahin Jedian. I don't really know how to introduce Shahin. I spent 1 hour, a very happy hour, talking to him about 2 weeks ago now. Shahin moved to the United States at a very early age, and obviously being detached from his birthplace at an early age encouraged him to learn to adopt a new culture. But Shahin always remembers having an insatiable drive for knowledge anyway. And that drive for knowledge has led him to become a certified NLP coach, a hypnotherapist master, and a Kabbalistic astrologer with a focus on Tikkun. You can find Shahin many places. Probably the best place to go is Google, and Google Shahin Jedian. Shahin is Shanin, Jedian is Jedian. And you'll find him there at irealself.com, which is home of his Real You Holistic Self-Discovery Centre. But he also has a new site that he's just put together recently, which is called Jedianix.com, Jedianix.com. But you'll also find him at very many places on the web. He's created a lot of MP3s, audios for hypnosis and all sorts of other things. Some are free, some are paid for. I'm sure you'd probably be interested in trying out a few of those after you've listened to this interview. I was expecting Shahin to talk about NLP, homeopathy, Kabbalistic astrology and hypnotherapy, and he obviously did a little bit, but what we got was more of a discussion about ourselves, our subconscious, our higher self, accessing the higher self, and all sorts of other interesting things. You really just need to listen to the interview. We had arranged the interview, I think, for the previous day. It was the morning for Shahin, it was the evening for me. But unfortunately, Shahin had to take his mother to hospital, so I was obviously very concerned. But Shahin was absolutely marvellous about this and said, yes, she's in hospital, but she's doing better. I'm very sorry I missed the interview. And I said, well, Shahin, don't be sorry. If you've got to take your mother to hospital, that's absolutely fine. And I just got an email from him a few days ago and said his mother is well on the mend, which is good to hear. But I mention that because that's more or less what we're talking about when we cut into the interview. But Shahin is just great to listen to, so I just maybe asked him 2 or 3 questions, I think. I just let him talk because I found what he was talking about so incredibly interesting. I really hope you get loads out of it yourself. I know I did, and I look forward to talking to Shahin again. But in the meantime, I'm going to shut up. Here is Shahin Jedian.
I've been working with this whole area with my clients, whether it's like physical pain, emotional issues, mental things with belief systems, or spiritual stuff with our energy, right? And how we perceive the world, including our life purpose. So the way I look at it is,
there are these four bodies, which is the physical body, more connected to earth, the emotional body, which is more connected to the water element, the mental or the belief system, which is air quality, and the spiritual, which is fire. So our emotional and physical bodies pretty much work with the ability to express tender affections, instincts, passions, yet our mental body or the belief system work more with reasoning, memories, decisions, conscious mind, the unconscious mind, subconscious mind, and the 21 rules of the subconscious mind, which I can discuss as we go along. And then the spirit, or our spiritual body, which is the fire, right? The spiritual nature to yearn, to just know your own being and your creator, higher self, and all the different states of consciousness that are along the way. One of the things that I would love to express or talk about in this talk that we're doing right now with you, Rob, is the relationship between the higher self, the conscious mind, the unconscious mind, and the emotional and physical body. For example, the higher self has certain principles that it operates through, right? Mm-hmm. And when we understand those principles, we're able to deal with life in a whole different way. And I'll summarize some of these principles. I'm in the process of completing my new book, which doesn't have a title yet, but the 13 principles that I mentioned in this book are unique in its way because I've worked very hard in collecting them in a way that's understood by the masses, allows it universally to be connected with any form of spirituality, religion, tradition, or ritual. It's pretty universal all across, but it's very clear. So it's ancient wisdom for modern times. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I call them the 3 principles, guidelines, and prime directives of the higher self. And the first one I have down is starting from the top. So I'm going to cover first with the higher self, and then we're going to go through the unconscious mind, which I have 21 rules, which I'm going to discuss about that. And then we have the emotion and the physical. So the higher self, the first thing that I say, and this, I call this 13 principles the Jedian method. Jedian being my last name, but at the same time also the word Jedi just rings a bell for me. Mm-hmm. So the higher self, also known to me as neshama, which means your essence or your being, acts as a totally trustworthy parental spirit over the individual. So that's principle number 1. Now, many of us consciously can hear that, but to accept this at a very unconscious level, that our higher self, the inner father that we have inside us, is consistently providing us with nurturing situations and events to create the next great step in our lives, it's not always easy to accept because the challenges that we get, our conscious mind talks us into thinking that we're being tricked, we're being abandoned, we're being attacked again. Why do I have to have this challenge? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to go through that? So as I was in the hospital with my mother, and I was working with her, and as she was in her complete denial, thinking that this symptoms that she's having is completely physical and has nothing to do with the emotions and the spirit and the mind, even though she knows deep inside, and we've had these discussions, and she herself has taught me these things when I was younger, but at this point, when there's pain, she goes into that denial, just like any of us will go. And it's totally normal. When we have pain, we immediately want to resort to that part of us that needs the emergency recovery. And we kind of forget about the higher aspects that can bring true healing. So I always say the best healing comes from the highest source possible. Mm-hmm. The best healing comes from the higher source, right? Okay. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So if the best healing comes from the highest source, what that means is that, I'll explain it like this. Let's say somebody is having physical pain, mm-hmm. right? The other day I had a client that came to me. I'm obviously not going to mention her name for privacy and confidentiality, but I will say a little short story that will create a little picture of what we're talking about here. She came in primarily for a hypnotherapy session, but right from the beginning, I started explaining to her that I use a very powerful integrated method, which over the past 15 years has come to be known to me as the Jedian method, because of the way my unconscious and my soul has been able to just absorb many different modalities into one reality for me, which I now call the Jedian method. But ultimately, it's a combination of my life experiences, NLP coaching, hypnotherapy, Kabbalistic Reiki, Kabbalistic astrology, and a lot of powerful tools with life purpose identification. So I explained to her that what you're going to be experiencing is going to be much more than just the hypnotherapy session, and she said she'd be open to that. Consciously, she said she'd be open to it, but then I would have to discover if she's open to it at an unconscious level while we're in a session together. And I was very excited to work with this. So originally she came in for some pain management, essentially, right? So her left leg had a lot of pain, and when she went to sleep at night, she just could not go to sleep. She had to cuddle herself. She had to move around, wake up. The bones inside her really had a lot of trauma, so to speak, traumatic, according to her physical pain, but to me, I was looking at it and seeing it in a whole different light. So we did the process, and I had her in a very deep, hypnotic, relaxed state, and I asked her during that stage, I want you to tell me what is the root cause of this, what is the emotional root cause of this problem, that if we were to locate that, it would create a shift in all of your body, including the physical pain, the physical discomfort. At that point, I started talking about the discomfort because she was already feeling so relaxed, it wasn't called pain anymore. And then she said to me, when I was 3 years old, an event happened between me and my parents, which I'm not going to go through the whole event just for the sake of confidentiality, even though I'm not mentioning the name. And that event, for some reason, comes to my mind as I speak about this pain. And she's like 38 years old now, so we're talking about 35 years ago, right? And then I just wanted to test to make sure that the event is connected to the pain in the physical body. So what I did was I said, just to be sure, I said, hey, I want you to go ahead and go into that event just for a moment and get into those emotions that you felt then. And then as soon as I said that to her, she felt the pain becoming very strong, all of a sudden going from discomfort to massive pain. And then I asked her again to come out of the event and just visualize the ocean, right? And then the pain would go away immediately, and it would become discomfort and then wither away. So I did that little test just to make sure that we know that the roots, the veins, the throbbing, the connection is really the same piece that's connected from that age. And she unconsciously nodded her head to me as I asked, would you agree that this is connected to the pain you're feeling physically right now? And she said yes. And then I did my process of healing, helping her heal and release those emotions, create new belief systems about what it is that she witnessed and the guilt that she was carrying around that had turned into physical pain. And then I did the process, which you might be familiar with, called glove anesthesia, of releasing the pain through hypnosis, releasing the physical pain. And we did Winter in Wonderland, which is a powerful imagery, where I had her hand become very numb and loose, and then borrowed that relaxing, loose feeling, numb feeling, and shifted it to the body part that was experiencing the pain. And I asked her unconscious mind, I said, is it okay with you now to release this pain now that you've found the root cause? And her unconscious mind in that hypnosis state was totally agreeable. And I made sure it was agreeable with many different formats, which is too lengthy to explain here. And when she was ready to release the emotion and accept the new spiritual belief system of her own inner power, at that moment she released the pain. And she released the pain, and she said she no longer feels the pain after 30 years. And I spoke to her the day after to make sure, and she was perfectly fine. And I spoke to her also the day after that day. And I plan to follow up with her, and we still have another follow-up to do. But the idea here is that everything starts at the top. Everything starts at the spirit, then mental, then emotional, then physical. And many people ask me, so what happens if I have a physical condition? Should I see a medical doctor? And I say, yes, absolutely see your medical doctor, see your physiotherapist, see your chiropractor, because the physical part needs to be dealt with. But immediately after you deal with the physical part, you must now begin to address the emotional. Otherwise, the physical part will recreate itself to ask for our attention. Because pain says like this. Pain says, pay with attention, or you pay with pain. Which is kind of funny because, it reminds us of that thing. It says, you'll pay for this, right? So it says, pay with attention or you pay with pain. And then after you pay with attention, which is first and foremost in this session that I did with her, was acknowledging that her unconscious mind is giving her a signal that I want your attention, right? So then I walked her through, hey, go ahead and ask your unconscious mind, go ahead and say thank you to your unconscious mind for giving you this pain, and ask your unconscious mind that you've already gotten the message and now it can release and turn it off, right? Because the unconscious mind won't go away until we actually pay attention, right? And say, okay, I got the attention. Yes.
Shahin?
Yes, I'm with you.
Was the lady aware of this situation when she was 3 years old? Was she aware that situation was causing her pain or any other sort of discomforts or trauma? Was she aware of that before she came in to see you, or how were you able to connect the incident when she was 3 to the pain when she was in her 20s and 30s?
Yes, no, she was not aware. Very good question. Thank you. Thank you, Rob, for asking that question. I think it's very valuable for everyone listening to this talk. Yes, she was not aware at all. First of all, she was not aware. She was not even, she did not even know that the emotions play a role in the physical part of the body, right? And more importantly, she was not aware at all about what happened when she was 3 consciously. This only got revealed, the trauma and the guilt that she was feeling from then only got revealed during the hypnosis session that we were working together. Does that answer your question?
Right. Yeah, it does. It was the answer I was expecting, but it's the part that I think a lot of the listeners will find the most interesting, and that's identifying the cause of pain and unhappiness. And hypnosis can help with that, but
absolutely,
But carry on with your story, Shahin, because what you're saying is really interesting. I don't really know where to start with my questions, but it's just very interesting to hear about your methods and all that you do with your clients and your philosophies as well. So keep going.
Thank you. I really appreciate the interview and the time we've put together, Rob. And I know that you're also a strong person in the healing industry and therapeutic industry, and you have such amazing energy, and that's how I came across you. So first of all, before I go any further, I just want to thank you for the energy and the time you put. In fact, yesterday we were supposed to do this interview, and you were just very accommodating to reschedule, and I appreciate that, and I'm really excited to share this message with everyone. I'll continue. I can talk about this relationship for a while because I want to talk about now the connection between the higher self and the unconscious mind. But before I do that, I'm going to quickly go through the 13 principles because I find them to be essential. Okay. Is that okay with you? Okay,
yeah,
so
for sure.
Principle number one, we said the higher self, or neshama, acts as a totally trustworthy parental spirit over the individual. Now, principle number 2, it says that the higher self is the representation of God's spirit within the individual, also known from the Zohar, or the Book of Kabbalah, Tselem Elohim, or Tselem Elohim, which means the shadow or the image of God. So, we talk about the aura, we talk about this realm around us that has been proven now through certain types of cameras that you can actually see the colors around our skin, around our body, which is called the aura. And in many different systems, it's called different things. In Hebrew or Kabbalah, it's called Or Makif, which means surrounding light, which is also an aspect of Tselem Elohim, the image of God that's within and without us, inside and outside. And so when we deal with the higher self, the moment we interact with someone, the moment you sit next to someone, when you come within 72 inches of that person, when I come within 72 inches of that person, any given person, there's a shift in the energy field because we're interacting with that person at the auric space level, right? Now, some of us are familiar with timeline therapy. Are you familiar with timeline therapy?
Yes, and
Okay, so I learned timeline with Tad James and Dr. Matthew James, and one of the things I learned early on when I was doing timeline is that we all hold our memories and different energies in different spaces. So I'll ask my clients, where's the future physically, and they'll point to it, like they'll say, in front of me. Another client I asked, where's the future? She said, it's to my left, right? And I said, where's the past? She said, it's right inside me, right here. And I said, where's the now? And her now was behind her, right? So it's, metaphorically speaking, interesting how we store space in our auric field, right? And I noticed immediately that the way she stores her space is continuously been causing her depression, because she stores her past in the now and she stores her future on the left, so everything is haphazard, right? And so I asked her, I did this quick technique with her. I said, listen, do you ever play video games? She said, yeah, I watched my brother play it, but, sometimes I played it also. I said, do you remember the old video games and the new video games? She said, yeah. I said, do you remember how the old video games like Sega and Atari, the real old systems, the ones in the museum now, those you used to have a linear thing. You would just go forward and backward. There was no 3D, right? And you couldn't turn the stage. You could only turn your player forward and backward. But the new ones like the Wii, the PlayStation, Xbox, PS3, and all the new ones that are coming up in the 2013 all the way to 2000 and forward. So those ones, they become more and more 3D, 4D, lifelike, right? So what I want you to do is notice how you can turn your player. You can move your player, but you can also move the stage. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and move your auric space stage and put your future in front of you. And I did this in a little mild relaxation right before trance, in a way where her unconscious mind was totally open to make this change, right? It's a little bit more difficult to do it consciously. You need to get the person into an alpha or theta state. And so I said, go ahead and do that now. And I said, go ahead and turn your future so that it's in front of you. Turn your past so that it's before you, physically, right, like behind you in your back. And your now is through you. And I gave her a few minutes to adjust to this because she was becoming hazy, because the shift was so strong. It was moving so many different elements of her life and memories, and it was putting it in spaces that she can now handle and deal with. I did the same thing in an addiction recovery house with a guy who was going to therapy for 3 years for depression. And I went and saw him 3 weeks later, and everyone told me that in that 3 minutes that we made that shift, they have never seen him happier than ever since that moment. And I'm not crediting myself with the technique, because I learned this technique from Dr. Tad James. And but I want to say, I do want to credit every single one of us for just becoming more aware that we have an auric space and we have a timeline and we're traveling in it all the time. And if we can learn to put things in the right template, that's the beginning of health. Because many people try to work on, I think Richard Bandler talks a lot about this, how psychiatrists work on the why so much, but sometimes we forget the how and the actual template of how we're running our timeline of emotions, memories, and everything like that. So the context is just as important as the content, right? So that changed. That created a massive shift, and the person was not living in the past anymore. They were now living in the now and having a future that was bright to look forward to. Obviously, I went through the submodalities and shifted all of the future colors, brightness levels. I made it more 3D. I added a lot of different elements that are difficult to explain in this session for those who are not as familiar with timeline therapy, hypnotherapy, and other modalities like that. But the bottom line is, the person had a brighter future, and had a now that the person was living in, and had a past that she could deal with, and also the other person that he could deal with, but they didn't have to have it in front of their eyes all the time. Because if your past is sitting in front of your eyes, auric space, all the time, guess what? There's going to be depression, right? Because the past has many elements that are unresolved, right? So having the proper space to be able to work with ourselves is really important. And so the quick exercise all of the listeners can do is simply just go ahead and imagine right now, as we're listening to this, just go ahead and visualize, feel, sense, or feel a vibration, a tingle in your body. It doesn't matter where it is. And notice that you have a timeline. And take a moment and allow the timeline to first notice how your timeline is. Is it from the right to the left? Is it up and down and then to the left? Notice how you store time. Point with your fingers. Where's the future? Where's the past? And where's the now? And if you notice that you have a timeline that is just zigzag and completely out of the order, and you notice your future is behind you or to your left and your past is ahead of you, then you might want to try on your own to do this exercise that I taught you, or get in touch with one of us that knows how to use timeline and create a shift, because that 2 minutes is the best 2 minutes of your life that you'll ever spend afterwards. It'll create a completely different template of how you manage memories, information, and all the rest of the 21 rules of the unconscious mind.
So somebody who finds that their timeline is a bit out of whack, they should contact an NLP specialist in their area, and they can look on Google for that.
Absolutely. Contact your NLP specialist, especially an NLP that understands timeline or time dynamics. And also, the more they understand about auric space, the better it is, right? Because it really, essentially, timeline is part of the aura. So that was principle number 2, okay? And principle number 2. Now, let's see. I'm not going to go through all the principles because they'll take a long time to discuss, but I'll go ahead and pick one more, and then we're going to move on to the unconscious mind discussion. Here's one that I find to be essential for anyone accessing their higher self. Now, some people ask me, hey, you know what? This is great, and I know I have a higher self, but how do I access my higher self? That could be maybe another time we can discuss that on another show. But first, we need to know the principles and what does the higher self even offer, and make sure that is it worth it for us to make the connection with the higher self a priority. That's what we're doing today, right? So it says here in my 13 principles, number 8, the higher self has the power to recognize root causes, and this I borrowed a little bit from timeline because I think it's very connected. And when releasing negative emotions, we call on the higher self through the unconscious mind. And we say, dear unconscious mind, please light up all the anger, fear, hatred, including the root cause, the first event, so that the higher self, or neshama, can recognize the cause and facilitate a release. Right? So by asking our higher self to light it up, meaning to brighten it up so we can see it, then we can begin to actually go towards releasing. Because, let's be honest with ourselves. We all have our denial mechanisms and defense mechanisms. And most of the time when I work with timeline and I ask a client, hey, go ahead to a time when you felt some trauma or some shift in your life or a significant emotional event, the client will say, I see something back there and it's very dark or it's dim. And I said, go ahead and make it brighter. Does it let you? Can you make it brighter? Will your unconscious mind allow you to make it a little brighter? And they'll make it a little brighter. And as soon as it becomes brighter, all of a sudden they explain to me the event and what happened and the content and the context. And it's like all of a sudden there's a flashlight in that area. So by facilitating and lighting it up, we can begin to see things in a way that normally our unconscious mind might have been hiding it for our own protection because we might have not been ready to deal with it. Because as I was going to explain a little further on, the unconscious mind keeps repressed emotions repressed for protection because we're not ready yet to deal with it, and then presents repressed memories for resolution when we're ready to deal with it. So when we have the unconscious mind repress memories with unresolved negative emotions, it's waiting for that day when we're ready to deal with it so it can present it to us. Now, here's what happens, and this is really interesting. A lot of people tell me, look, I don't know why, but every time I come to have a great time, everything is fine, everything is good and dandy, all of a sudden I have an event that I have to deal with. Why couldn't the universe just leave me alone and let me have a moment to myself? Right? That ever happened to you, Rob?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, right?
Sure.
It's like, yeah. And I'm going to say a quick story from Kabbalah and from the Bible, which brings an amazing light to this. We're all familiar with the movie Joseph and the Technicolor Code, I think, the jacket. I don't remember exactly what the name of the movie was, but I remember seeing the content of it. And Brad Pitt has another movie called Joseph. It was a 2-part series where it's Joseph and the 12 brothers and their father Jacob. And then there's so in this story, it's a very fascinating story where Joseph in the Bible is someone who goes through a lot of hardships and follows his dreams and does not fall into victim consciousness, even though he's in jail for something he never did. And he's always holding on to his proactive consciousness. Even within jail, he's able to create an entire scenario where all the people in jail begin to see his power of dream interpretation, and eventually the Pharaoh wants him out, and he becomes the advisor to the Pharaoh. So that's a powerful story for someone who's just naturally proactive. Like if you're familiar with astrology, like for example, Aries signs are very like proactive. They'll jump into the sea, take risks. These are fire element people, you know. But Pisces, by nature, is more soft, right? Can fall into that kind of victim consciousness and needs to get out. Everybody has a challenge, you know. The Aries will have a challenge not to be reactive. The Taurus will have the challenge of not to get too comfortable or lazy. They need to get on their toes and move more. But then they're great healers. And then the Gemini will have the challenge of becoming too intellectual and too much in the mind, a double personality, and, you know, they'll need to learn to tap into their heart. And then you have, like, the Cancer sign, who's very emotional, needs to learn some objectivity and learn to use all these nourishing powers and remove the masks of hiding from the emotions because they're overwhelming. So each sign has its challenge. Now the Pisces, being the last sign of the reincarnation, has this challenge of falling into victim consciousness. So when we talk about this story that Joseph was in the jail and he was able to overcome victim consciousness, of not saying, oh my God, why did this all happen to me? Look, I didn't even do anything, I'm in jail. It's not just the story of someone, any person. It's a story of someone who their biggest tikkun or correction or challenge in life was not to fall into the victim consciousness, because he was a Pisces sign, right? So it's a powerful element when we know what our challenge is, and that's another aspect that I do called Kabbalistic astrology, where I help people locate what their particular challenge is and what they need to pay attention to in this lifetime for the transmigration of the soul to take its roots. And it's a powerful thing. I have it on theportrayer.com. That's my website where I talk about, where I have different, you can sign up and get my newsletters. It's a powerful thing when we discover what our particular challenge is in this world, right? And so in Joseph's challenge in jail, it was for him not to fall into victim consciousness. That's it. If all he had to do was do that, everything else was kind of like icing on the cake. So now you have his father, his name was Jacob, and this is all very powerfully metaphoric in many ways. But we can say, yes, this actually happened in history, but as a metaphor, it's very powerful. So Jacob, it says in the scriptures and also the Kabbalah, it says that Vayeshev Yaakov, the Hebrew words are, and Yaakov, Jacob, began to settle down, meaning become very comfortable. And he thought, okay, now I'm getting a little older. I have 12 sons. I want to settle down a little bit. I want to let go, right? And then immediately after that, his son Joseph had to go through those tribulations of being taken away and by his brothers and being sold to slavery and to the merchants and then going all the way to Egypt, and for him to not know if he's alive anymore or not. And then him going into depression. So there, the Kabbalah says, and another great commentator that lived in France 800 years ago, his name was Rashi, he says these powerful words, and I'm going to quote them in Hebrew first because I find that the Hebrew language has some magic to it. It says, Bikesh Yaakov Leshev Beshalva, that Jacob requested unconsciously to fall into comfort zone. And as a result, immediately the universe offered him another challenge, which was his son being taken away, him not knowing that he's destined for becoming a king of Egypt, but for now, his son just being lost, him thinking that the wolves have torn him apart and that he's dead. So this is a metaphor for the unconscious mind of how it all works, that the universe and the unconscious mind are waiting for us to get to that peaceful moment so that we can be ready now to deal with unresolved stuff. So the universe is very fair, and so is your unconscious mind. It's not going to give you a challenge when you're already drowning. It's going to give you a challenge when you're a little bit peaceful so you can deal with it. And that's part of the issue, right? You have comments on that? Or, yeah.
Well, no, it's very interesting. I totally understand what you're saying. If I understand it, that the universe conspires to throw at you something that will ultimately teach you what you need to learn. And I'm really interested in how we got there, which was talking about the higher self and how the people who are listening to this podcast, they can access their higher self to find the solutions. It's probably not the wrong word, but it can find the source of their issues, the source of the problems that the universe is throwing at them, or the problems are coming from within, and how to deal with them. And I'm sure you do that in your practice. And it's comforting to know that the higher self is within us somewhere, or above us, or wherever, but we have access to it, and it's there always, and we can use it to find the source of our problems, and we can use it to find potential solutions if we work at it. And that's the part that I really love to hear, if I've got that right at all, Shahin.
Sure, great. That's wonderful. I really value your input because I can go to so many different directions, and I think you're keeping me on the route that will help our listeners benefit most, and I really appreciate that. So, yes, Rob, I'll go into that. The higher self can be accessed in many different ways, and like you said, the higher self is totally inside us and around us and all over us, right? It's, in fact, screaming so loud that we've become blind and deaf to the shouting of our higher self. In fact, it's so much light coming in from our higher self that part of the problem is that we're overwhelmed by our higher self, right? So here's the thing. The conscious mind does three things. It deletes, distorts, and generalizes information. The unconscious mind follows orders, right, and creates the realities that we want. So the conscious mind is a goal setter, and the unconscious mind is a goal getter. So the higher self is the energy. It's the power, it's the nurturing, all-encompassing, beyond the five senses, and the part of us that can heal any wrong. So now, how do we access the higher self? There are many ways to access our higher self. The first and most simplest, yet one that takes exercise, which I recommend, is to sit in quietness with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is, I'll share with you my own private practice. And the other day I was talking to Michael Beckwith from The Secret, and he was sharing his practice of what he does. But I'm going to share with you, everyone has their way of doing it, but I'll share with you my way. My way is I get up in the morning, and in my spiritual practices, I have something called the tefillin. It's something I wrap around my left arm, which is close to my heart, And then there's something I also put on my head on my third eye. And I do a meditation where I connect my thoughts to my heart, and that the thoughts and hearts kind of have this way of withering away from each other if we don't give it the practice and attention through meditation. So now, for those of us who just want to do something more simple, this is what I recommend, and I do this too. I put a timer, right, because my mind has a tendency to say, okay, I got to go run to the next task. I got to take care of this. Oh, my God, somebody just knocked on the door. I got to answer this phone call. I got to do this. And so my mind races ahead. So what I want to do is I want to calm that down. So I put a timer, and I just put it on 5 minutes. So I know that now I have a boundary, that within this 5 minutes I can completely let go, and the timer is going to ring when it's time to go. Now, you could do longer, but I don't recommend longer because the 5 minutes is really, really acceptable to the conscious mind. It's not going to, you're not going to get resistance from your opponent inside, right? So because 5 minutes will be like, okay, it's just 5 minutes. I'm not giving anything up. Okay, it's just 5 minutes, you know. So you'll buy into it, right? Then I put in the 5-minute timer, and I just sit there and breathe 10 times in, and I breathe in through my nose all the way to fill my belly, and I exhale twice as long with twice as much power on each breath. And then after I've done this 10 times, I become very quiet. There's actually a shift in the physiology when you do this. So you're working with your breath, which is connected with your soul and your higher self. That's the highest level of connecting with yourself. It's your breath, right? And then you're working with your body because you're taking in the breath and throwing it into different elements of your body. You're filling your stomach, which goes through your heart chakra all the way to your stomach. So it's very simple, and we can all do it. 5 minutes, 10 breaths, inhale, twice as long, exhale. That's it. After that happens, there's a quietness that occurs. And I have of allowing my higher self to be filtered through my body. Because the higher self is always there. Its overwhelming light is actually what's causing us not to be able to feel it, because it's so there that we can't see it anymore. So I allow it to be filtered through my conscious and my unconscious, through my crown chakra, Ketherian, Keter in Kabbalah, we say, the 10 sefirot. Or if you want to use the 7 chakras, just your crown chakra, your third eye, throat chakra, just going down all the way to your heart chakra, to your solar, navel, sacral, and down all the way to the root chakra. So just feeling this whole quietness coming in. Now here's the cool part. The quietness creates your inner advisor to tell you things. The only reason we're not hearing the voice of our higher self is because there's noise. When we quiet down, then the noise gets taken away, and you begin to hear a message. This is called the inner advisor message. Now, I do have also tools for those of us who want it done in a more guided imagery way. If you email me to info@irealself.com, info at I, like I go home, real, like real estate, self, like I love myself, irealself.com, I'll send you a 30-minute meditation that can release the black bags of the past and bring in the purpose. It's more guided imagery with powerful alpha and theta sounds in the background, and unique unconscious meditations that I'm reading in the background from powerful scriptures. And so that one combines everything with the higher self, the unconscious, conscious mind, and it could create a great tool. But simply speaking, if you're left anywhere in any room, the tool that I just taught can be done. And we got to just keep remembering things are so simple. That's why we skip them. In fact, I once took a class, and they said, find all the F's, like the letter F like Frank, in these sentences, and tell me how many there are. And there was like 100 people there. Most people said there's 3, and maybe a few people said there was 8. And in reality, there was 8 letters of F. But everyone skipped the word of in the sentence, O-F, like it was so overused that the unconscious mind immediately skipped it, right? So that's what happens. Our higher self is so present that we tend to skip it. I mean, for me, that's like makes me be quiet right now.
Well, it's difficult to imagine in this day and age where people are running around with their problems and everything. And I've heard it said before that there's an open secret that the higher self is all around. It's great to hear that it's shouting and it's brilliant and it's bright and it's everywhere and we do. It's just so obvious we don't notice it. But that's a great message.
Yes, that's my message. That's my message, and that's what my message is. And my message began to become stronger for me personally when I began to access my own higher self through a spirit guide that gives me powerful messages on an everyday basis. And those are all within our presence too. It's just a question of asking for it, being quiet to hear the messages, doing our everyday short little meditations. I do have more than 60 different MP3 meditations available for those of us who are interested to tap into different elements at irealself.com. You can look under the MP3 store section. And I have a lot of free ones too for everyone, because my intention was for everyone to be able to benefit from it. And if you Google, if you go to YouTube and just do youtube.com/real you holistic, U is just one letter, real, and then a U, the letter holistic, you'll find a lot of my free meditations there. And for the listeners, I strongly urge you to look into that. There's one I have which I highly recommend to everyone. It's called it's from the album Sleep Sanctuary, but it's called The Hall of Reflective Recovery. And I found that one for many of my clients to be very powerful. It helps you to access your higher self, and at the same time helps you do a regression where you release those things that are holding us in the past. And so, staying connected. I think another thing, Rob, is I recommend for people to stay connected with the influences in your life that are helping you. Many times we find something that works for us, and the key is to now remain connected, because every single one of us finds something that works for us, and we got to just remain connected. If someone, if someone comes to you, Rob, and they do an amazing NLP session with you, and they love working with you, then it makes sense for them to continue to come back and keep gleaning from the knowledge and the change and the shift. I think, unfortunately, people want the quick fix. They want one session and I just want to be fixed, or I want to be this, or I want to be that. I've been working with my clients, and I have unique packages, and some packages are 6 sessions, some are 8 sessions, some are half a year, and some are just one session. But I always tell my clients that it's not so much about the sessions, it's about being a coachable human being. When we become coachable, our ego gets shut down immediately, and the light can come in. The moment we accept that I'm going to hear advice from someone outside of myself, our objectivity becomes powerfully influential inside us. And even if you don't necessarily connect with that person every day, just the fact that we're in the state of being coachable allows our soul to give us more answers, because it creates a disassociation from the emotions and the body and the soul, so you could see yourself from almost outside of yourself. Because you can imagine even your coach or your therapist or your healer or whoever it is you work with, or your spirit guide, you can imagine your spirit guide seeing you from a different angle. That changes us, right? Because think about it. Essentially, what happens when you go to seek help from someone else? Really what happens is that person becomes neutral space for you to be able to see yourself once more in the light of your purpose, right? So I highly recommend all of us to, at this moment, right now, to accept the idea of being coachable, to accept that the excuses that we make that, I don't have the time or I don't have the money, those are all excuses, because ultimately if you don't do your purpose, where are you going with everything else that you're doing? And the bottom line is, when you're born, the Creator has already given you a separate amount of time and money specifically to be set aside for your growth and change. And if you don't spend that, it's just going to go somewhere else, God forbid, to physical health issues or to places where it's just, going to have to end up in the lower department. Like we said, everything starts with the spirit, mental, emotional, and then the physical. So that's an important piece for us to accept, that not being coached is an excuse. And personally, myself, I'm always being coached. I've worked with Tony Robbins. I've worked with Kabbalah systems, both ancient and modern. I have a consistent coach that I see on a regular basis, and I have thousands of students and clients that are being coached through me at the same time. And I would not for a moment take the give up the luxury of also being coached at the same time, because why should I, right? Why shouldn't I receive the beauty and the love and the healing of coaching on a regular basis if I'm going to be helping so many people, right? Now, every single one of us is a coach in our lives. If you're married, or if you have children, or if you have a brother or a sister or a mom, or if you have a self, yourself, you're coaching yourself in some way. So it's important to be coached, to coach yourself and to be coached, and to be with someone that can help you get there. And, so I highly recommend Rob. I highly recommend some of the different services that I want to gift you with. I highly recommend yourself finding something that talks to you, whatever it is, that thing that talks to you, I might not be the person for you. Rob might be the person for you. Someone else all the way in Africa might be the person for you. It doesn't matter, but it's just a matter of being open to being coachable.
I'm really interested in what you just said there as well, which is a surprise to a lot of people. I think a lot of people think that people like you, you probably know anything, and it's really humbling to see that you're accepting being coached throughout your life as well. And I think it's a really important point that we never stop learning, and we never should stop. We should never feel so arrogant as to think that we don't need help, because that's a trap we can all fall into, and it's really refreshing to hear that you're still being coached. So that's really amazing. But Shahin, we've been talking for a long time. I don't want to keep you, but I don't want to let you go before you can tell the listeners where they can find you. I know you've talked about it already, but just repeat it. The best place is on the internet to find Shahin Jedian.
Absolutely. First of all, I wanted to thank you for taking the time to share this energy that we're bringing out to the world, because I think that energy is accumulative, and what you're doing and what we're doing and what all of us are doing, and anyone that's listening to this that passes this along, and including your wonderful radio show that's expanding on an everyday basis, all of this energy that's expanding is so wired invisibly in a way that's going to bring blessing to me, you, and the whole world. And I'm very open to share my message, and I would love to help people connect. So I will go ahead and give you some tools of how you can benefit from some of the tools I'm discussing. So overall, our system, which I work with my wife, her name is Tanya Jedian. She's the author of the book Finding Inner Happiness. Overall, we've been giving seminars, classes, certifications, one-on-one sessions, and also we have the products. So I'll quickly just run down what we have in terms of the products, and then I'll give information how to access them. So the products that we have and the sessions that we have are one-on-one sessions. There are 3 types of sessions that we do, either over the same cast that you see, any meeting, private sessions. Those are 3 sessions that we have. One is called Forgiveness. It's 4 sessions of 90 minutes. The other one is called Path Creation. Those are 6 sessions of 90 minutes. And the last one is called Reinvention of Self. So those are one-on-one private sessions for someone who's really interested. You can access us either by going to irealself.com, ireal, R-E-A-L, self, S like Sam, E-L, flikeFrank.com, or you can call our offices directly at 323-680-4072, and my name is Shahin Jedian. So those are the sessions. Shahin is Shahin. You could see it on the screen. And Jedian is Jedian for those of you on the phone. If you Google Shahin Jedian, you'll also get a bunch of resources coming from many different directions. But one good way to listen to some of my works is on YouTube, like I mentioned, youtube.com/real, just one letter U, holistic. That would be one way to do it. Another way would be to go to irealself.com and look under the section of MP3 store. You can also sign up for our newsletter at irealself.com and receive every week our events, our different connections, and many different free meditations. If you send me an email just mentioning that you listen to this show, I will send you a $35 value gift of my meditation of forgiveness and allowing your higher self in. It's a very powerful process that many have enjoyed, and it's very sought after. So you would send the email to info@irealself.com. info@irealself.com. So those are the things that I would like to offer you. I would like to make one more offer now, and I am a little bit scared to make the offer because I need to limit the offer, but here's what I'll do. The first 10 people that call in or email us at info@irealself.com, I'm going to offer a 30-minute strategic breakthrough session, either over the phone or on the web. Now we are located in Los Angeles, so that's where we are. Generally, our offices are in Los Angeles. And I'm going to offer that to the first 10 people that send us an email or give us a call at 323-680-4072. And this is my gift that I've been there's a little story behind it. I made a contract with the universe. And I said that if a certain thing that I want to do goes well, I'm going to go ahead and offer these 10 sessions as a gift to the universe, right? So I want to make it happen, and today I think it's the right time. And I also want to do it as a goodwill energy that I want to send out to the universe, and I want everyone that benefits from it to also send their good energy to my mother who's healing in the hospital. So is that a good gift? Do you think that people will appreciate that?
I think that's an extraordinary gift, Shahin. I think we're extremely grateful for your time. Not only for your time, but for the gifts you've laid out there for people, and they can take their choice as to which one they'd like to take. I mean, that's amazing. 10 half-hour free sessions. But thank you for that. Thank you so much for coming on, and I pass my best wishes on to your mother, who we know is recovering in hospital at the moment. And thank you so much, Shahin. I'm so grateful for you coming on and talking to me today.
Thank you, Rob. Again, thank you. All I can say is thank you. Have a wonderful day.
And you, Shahin.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that was fantastic. Thank you, Shahin, for that. I love to hear you speak. I'd love to talk to you anytime. It's absolutely fantastic. If you want to find out more about Shahin, you could just Google him, Shahin Jedian, that's ShahinJedian. And you can find him at irealself.com and jedianix.com or jedianix.com. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but you've made it to the end, and at the end there was a very generous offer from Shahin, who said that anyone who emails him, or the first 10 people who email him at the email address info@irealself.com, will be offered a 30-minute strategic breakthrough session, which is a fantastic gift. There's also the offer of a 35 value gift MP3 as well.
So if you've made it to the end of this podcast, why don't you do yourself a favour and contact Shahin at info@irealself.com. But lastly, it's to me to thank Shahin for granting us this interview. I really enjoyed speaking to him. I really enjoyed listening to him. And I've listened to the interview back a couple of times since, and I've really enjoyed that as well. So I really hope that you, wherever you are, you enjoyed this podcast as much as we did. And hopefully you'll join us again for the next Genuine Hypnosis Happiness podcast. But until then, from me, Rob Cubbon, it's goodbye. Goodbye.